Welcome back to another video, folks. This time we are doing ladders, bridges, walkways, general pieces that you will need to put on any table, board or build. Any D&D dungeon and any cave system is incomplete without some sort of ladders or walkways or bridges or something to allow the minis you put down on the table to get from A to B across the board. So for this one, it's really simple. You just need some coffee stirrers and some lollipop sticks or some card, anything you like to form the basis of these. I use the lollipop sticks and the coffee stirrers. I think they give the nicest results. You can use balsa wood as well. It's just whatever you've got on hand and easiest to find. So for this, what you want to do is you want to start taking your coffee stirrers and your lollipop sticks and you want to start breaking or cutting them to length depending on what type of finish you want. If you break the coffee stirrers just between your fingers with your nails, you will get a more ragged finish to the edge to make it look a little more ramshackle and roughly cut and hewn pieces of wood to be nailed together if you're going for a more ramshackle goblin-esque feel. Or you can use a craft knife or a pair of big snips to cut in a much neater fashion to give you a nice tidy finish to show a more man-made or deliberate style of construction for this one. So you want to cut these to length, you want to do any texturing to them extra and above if you feel like doing any above and beyond texturing. I personally don't. I feel the wood effect of the wood used from these two things shows through enough in the final product that extra texturing isn't needed. And then once you go through this, you can make up as much. I would suggest batch cutting a vast amount of these, as much or as little as you feel like you need. If you have any extra at the end of the build, it's a great thing to put away just in case you need more at a later date or you want to build more. They're a very useful thing to have. And then once you've done that, you can get yourself sorted out and set up for stage 2. Stage 2, here we go. Time to raid the kitchen, especially that little drawer where you keep all the useful things like the tin foil and the baking paper and the cling film, and in this case you want that grease-proof baking paper or baking parchment, depending on what you call it in your part of the world. You want to take a nice strip of that, you want to tape it down to your cutting board to keep it nice and flat, and then you want to use the fact that you can see through this grease-proof paper to use the grid on your cutting mat to help your measurement. And then all you need to do is put down what you're going to use as the main struts and rungs of your ladder, in this case, or your walkway, depending on which one you want to build. And then you want to just cover it all in PVA, and then once you've got the PVA down, it doesn't matter if you make a mess, doesn't matter if the PVA overruns. When the build is finished, you'll be able to just take the ladder, clean off the baking paper as it won't stick. And then if you are making a ladder, in this case here, you simply put the rungs of the ladder across the way for the steps where you'll be standing. Measure them roughly that far apart. I find, for reference, just before, or if you like to have, if you've not made them before, a good thing to do is you take a base of a mini that hasn't got a mini on it yet, and just place the base in between each step to make sure they are functional ladders and you can place minis on them if you so desire. I've made a few ladders now. I'm at a stage where I'm pretty good at eyeballing the measurement of getting base fit spaces up and down the length of a ladder. And once you've done that, it's dry time for that style. A different option, of course, is you can use for a stronger bridge and a walkway. These are 2 lollipop sticks in comparison to more coffee stirrers. Again, put them down together right next to each other, cover them in PVA. And in this case, once you get all the PVA covered down on them, you take the lengths you have made for the boards on this walkway, and then all you need to do is simply put them down as close together as possible on the walkway and hard as they like, up against the edges, up against the edge of each other. Press them down into the PVA, no gaps whatsoever, and let them dry nicely next to one another. Now the next option you have here is extended or longer bridges and barricades that you want to be longer than the length of one coffee stirrer or one lollipop stick. In this case, what you want to do is something similar to what I'm doing here. I found this works really nicely, and it keeps enough strength that it will support minis over a larger gap. You just want to stack lollipop sticks on top, one end to the other, bridging the middle gap with an extra on top. Glue all of that down with some PVA glue, and then once you've got that done, you can move on and start putting the slats of this walkway on. In this case, in a lot more of a ramshackle, goblin-esque build style. And then once you've got that done, you just slap them on as much as you like, as squint or as uneven. You can take a craft knife and you can cut these in diagonals and cut little broken bits. You can snap them off between your fingers in a much more rough manner. And once you've done all that and you glue them all down, it's just a case of setting all of these things aside to dry off, and then once they're dry, we can move on to the next stage, which is the good old crafting standard of painting wood to try and make it look like wood, which many people, including myself, make overly complicated for the sake of painting wood, in my opinion. But in the end, you get a nice finish, and that's what I like. It's the nice finish on the end for your table that I'm a fan of. So here we are, next stage, time to get some paint down. For this, I personally like to paint my wood in wooden colours. I start with a very, this is almost, I would say, a wash. This is extremely watered down, brown, sepia coloured brown paint, all over the bridges and the walkways. As much as you like, just splash it on, here, there and everywhere, get it in all the cracks, cover up all the little nooks and crannies of every build, and then set that aside to dry. And do the same base wash on all of the pieces across all three of the pitch examples I've made here. And then once that's dry, you can move on to the detailing of them, which is just some simple dry brushing with various colours and different styles. Perfect, time to get some details down. So, for dry brushing, I suggest, as usual, big large makeup brush. I think it works very well for this style and piece. For dry brushing, I don't use much else these days, because they're cheap, easy to get, and they're great. So, 3 different options for how to dry brush some detail into your wooden pieces. I suggest, if you want to get a more natural wooden look, you dry brush with the grain of whatever style of wood you are using, and in this case, for the first piece, this little tight packed walkway, I am using a beige colour, a sandy beige tone, and you just want to dry brush across the wood with the grain to catch as much of the details of the natural wood that is already there underneath the paint for the coffee stirrer stuff. Now, for the large bridge and walkway, I have decided to give it a much more aged wood look. And I feel the best way to do that is to take a light grey and give a very firm dry brush with a somewhat harder brush, so a non-makeup brush in this style. Use the light grey, go over it again, following the wood grain as much as possible of the wood underneath to try and catch as much of that natural, actual wooden texture and highlight that you want to grab. And once you do the entirety of that bridge piece in the light grey, you have an aged wood look, because most wood that ages naturally outdoors, if it is untreated and unpainted, will turn a shade of grey after the sun has hit it and it's aged out and it's lost a lot of its moisture and it gets very dry. So I think that's a nice look for how to do an aged style of natural outdoor weathered wood. And then the final dry brushing colour is to be a sepia brown, the exact same one you used for the wash, and again go with a grain, a nice firm brush, and it gives the appearance of a nice new freshly cut piece of wood for a nice freshly built ladder. So these 3 techniques, I think, show you a new style of freshly cut and built wooden material. The middle long bridge with the grey is an aged older bridge, and the lighter colour on the right is a slightly aged but nearly new-esque style of paint colour. Give you 3 different kinds of wood, and I think that works out really well for the sweep of anything you might want to put on a table. As usual guys, if you've liked this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more of this stuff, please subscribe to the channel. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments down below. I'll try and answer them as best I can. Here's some glamour shots of the build, just on the table in various different ways. Some castle defences, and then in some D&D or small scale style tables of what you can do with them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, folks.